Hello, I'm Ashley Carmichael from Sky Accountants with the latest episode of the Sky Accountants podcast. Today I'm here with Anthony, who's a client manager with us, and we're having a bit of a debrief on the federal budget that was handed down, as it always is, 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, the 14th of May. And the Honourable Jim Chalmers, Slim Jim, has delivered the budget. We've got all the budget papers and poured through it. And, just for some headline statistics coming out of that, the government have been spruiking the 22.1 billion surplus they had in 22/23. They're telling us that they're forecasting another surplus for 23/24 of 9.3 billion, which is about 0.3% of GDP. And they're telling us it's about a 10.5 billion improvement since the mid-year EFO. And so that all sounds great, but there is a but. There's always a but. The 24/25 financial year is forecast to be a $28.3 billion deficit. It's nice to have some surpluses, as the political game goes. We take full responsibility for the successes and blame external factors for the fails. And as my father would say, are these surpluses the result of luck or good management? So we'll let you judge. But in terms of a bit of context, the next federal election is on the horizon. It needs to be held by the 27th of September 2025. And what that means is that there's a pretty strong chance that this is the last budget that they will deliver before going to an election. And I think they've sort of treated it as such. There's certainly been a number of things being announced prior to and in the budget that are aimed at sort of addressing some of the sore points that we're seeing out there at the moment, to sort of, if we're cynical, to curry a bit of favour. But balancing that, we've come through and continuing in a period of high inflation. We've got jitters in both the domestic and global economies. And we've got cost of living pressures, all the rest of it. And look, at the end of the day, I don't think anyone was really expecting it to be a big spending budget. I don't know that anyone thought there would be any sort of surprises or unexpected things coming out of it. What do you think, Anthony? I think it was pretty underwhelming, even for one that we thought was not going to be particularly whelming.
Yeah, it was pretty underwhelming. There weren't really any new key measures announced. Most of them were already announced prior. Probably a lack of detail in some of them as well. We thought we were going to get some more detail, but hasn't eventuated as yet. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, look, I thought it was interesting in that, historically, we've had budget leaks that come out, and the cynics amongst us sort of see that those are they do them well ahead of the budget, and they're kind of testing the reception that they might get. So they do them a bit quiet, and then maybe, depending on whether or not the public seem to respond well or not, they might go back to the drawing board before budget night. But
we'll see.
Yeah, there was definitely, really very little that we didn't know already before budget night. In fact, we wrote about it in in our blog probably 2-3 weeks ago. And those are all, big announcements, things like a future made in Australia, and our, with the affordable housing, the national defence strategy, and even, in the last couple of weeks, the announcement around HEX debts and indexation. There's really nothing new. And in fact, one of the things that I've found a little bit perplexing is that, that there's been a lot of talk around the budget and the stage 3 tax cuts, which have been in the pipeline now for years. Not sure that it really counts as a budget announcement. And, whilst they did tinker with them, that all happened months ago now too. So it's, I guess it affects the budget, but it's anything but a new measure. But look, I think it would be good that if we had a bit of a page turn. I've got my materials all around me. I'm sure you do too, Anthony.
Yeah.
But a bit of a page turn. We cover some of the more sort of noteworthy items from the budget. I'd encourage listeners to get on over to our website. On our blog page, we've got a downloadable guide that's quite comprehensive. We're not going to get through all of that detail. A lot of it's quite specific or not that relevant, but yeah, if you're into the detail, get on and have a look at that. But what we'll do is we'll have a bit of a page turn and talk about some of the more significant measures and provide a few insights on those. Before I do that though, what we do want to do is make sure that people are abundantly clear that whenever we're talking about budgets, that it's just an announcement, and any changes that are put forward as part of the budget need to get themselves through Parliament and become law. And history tells us that things take time to get through that process. Some things get abandoned, some things just flounder and don't get abandoned but don't go anywhere, what we accountants call announced but unenacted measures. And then we get some that undergo a fair bit of change before they see the light of day. So we've always got to be a bit mindful about trusting our politicians on the things announced in budgets. We need to see it in black letter law. All right, so we mentioned a minute ago the stage 3 tax cuts. We've got a blog on that again encourage people to go and have a read about. They kick off from the 1st of July this year. The talk is that that benefits all Australians. What's the saying, Anthony? Everyone gets a tax cut or something like that.
Yeah. Correct.
Look, it's not new news, but there is some benefit to be had from that, and sort of tied to that as well as the changes to the Medicare thresholds. So we won't devote any more time than that to that topic. I think it's old news. But one of the things that some people might be a little bit interested about are the energy relief. So what have we got there, Anthony? It's a credit of $300 against the energy bill for households, and there's a little bit in there for business as well, $325.
Yeah. So, and yeah, there's no eligibility criteria at this stage. So everybody's eligible. Which is interesting.
Devil's in the detail. We'll wait and see.
Exactly right.
Look, from my perspective, I won't knock back a $300 credit at my house. What about you?
No, I definitely won't knock it back. I don't think I'd be hard pressed to find anyone that will. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see if it does get through in its current form.
Yeah, look at it's a bit of a vote buyer, isn't it? It's like I understand where they're coming from, and energy prices have gone up, and cost of living, and all that sort of stuff. The cynic in me sort of, I won't go anymore, but look, I'm sure if households and businesses can get a little bit of relief, and it is only a little bit, they'll take what they can get. But maybe we need some more meaningful policy in this sort of space. But anyway, moving on. So the one that was big in the news was the HEX, or the helps debt indexation, and that was a bit of an announcement. There was a bit of uproar last year. So for the uninitiated, HEX debt, for people studying at university and whatnot, and on the 1st of June each year, the debts get indexed. So they don't charge interest, but they index them. And similar mechanism to get to essentially the same result in my books. But what happened is, because it is linked to the CPI, and the CPI went through the roof, it was 7 point whatever percent, that made a 7.1%, I believe it was, a really significant impact on people with HEX debts. And they were sort of expecting a reasonably significant indexation again this year. And so I think they're trying to address that issue of younger people with big HEX debts, and how that then feeds into things like housing affordability, etc., etc. So they've announced a bit of a change to how they're going to do it. So they will still be indexing it, but they're going to do the lower of CPI and the wage price index. It will be interesting to see how it plays out in the longer term. But allegedly it's going to deliver a fair bit of relief. And one of the interesting aspects is they're backdating it to 2023. So effectively trying to reverse some of the hit that was taken last year. I know that there are people out there that saw what happened and thought, now's the time to pay off my HEX debt. And we're very much waiting on some detail to see how they're going to handle that backdating element of it, particularly for people who no longer have a HEX debt.
Yep.
So yeah, that's an interesting one. We'll see what happens there. Next on my list is some changes to the paid parental leave scheme. So we've actually written about some changes to that scheme in terms of the duration. So they've already made some changes to that which are beneficial. But now what we're being told is that they're going to pay super on paid parental leave. Historically, it didn't attract super, but going forward from the 1st of July 25, it will. And look, I think that's a good thing. What do you think, Anthony? Do you like this one?
Yeah, I think this is a good one. Paid parental leave, probably something that I know when my kids were first born, would come in handy. I think we only got 2 weeks back then, so I think it's a help for young parents. So it's a good thing, and it's also a good thing for super to be added onto it.
Yeah,
they otherwise would have been earning if they were in the workforce.
Yeah, it's just sort of making sure that people keep contributing to super. It's a long-term play, and I think in many respects, it's sort of, the more that they can support people early on, the less they have to support them when they get to retirement age if they're underfunded.
Yeah.
I won't spend any time on the next couple of items, but there's a bit of change around rent assistance from the Commonwealth. They've funded some more home care packages for the aged care sector, but noting that, there's quite a bit of change afoot in that sector, off the back of the Royal Commission. Not a topic for today. That's a big topic, but yeah, there's a few sort of social security type changes in there. Things like the pharmaceutical benefit scheme and that kind of stuff. What else do we have of significance? So the small business instant asset write-off, Anthony. Maybe we give a brief history of this one. It is fairly relevant. But essentially what this is about is when businesses purchase assets, and we know it like the back of their hand, but perhaps not everyone does. And essentially what happens is when you buy an asset, it's usually depreciable, which means that you get a tax deduction, but you get it over time in a piecemeal fashion, and can be a short time or a long time. But what we've got in our Tax Act is we've got a threshold that says if the cost of the asset is less than that threshold, just claim the deduction in the year you bought it. And let's move on. And what's written into the legislation, the permanent element of the legislation, if I can call it that, is $1,000. But going back, I don't even know how long now, it's a long time, we've had this idea where they will temporarily increase that threshold as a means of encouraging businesses to invest in equipment and whatnot. And it essentially gives them a bit of an upfront tax break to incentivize them. And so that number over the course of time has bounced around quite significantly. Then, when we got into COVID, we had the what they call the temporary full expensing, where we could buy a rocket ship and write that off.
Yeah.
We had the money. It was an unlimited deduction. That all sort of came to an end. We had a budget announcement in last year's budget saying that they will temporarily give us 20 grand as the write-off threshold to the end of financial year 24. And it's quite problematic in that it's not law yet, and we're getting pretty close to the end of that financial year, and it's hard to make good business decisions based on something that's an announcement, not law. And essentially what happened is the government, not all that long ago, put the legislation through the House of Reps and went to the Senate. And, long story short, the Senate put forward an amendment saying we want it to be 30K, not 20K. Everyone thought, great. It sat there for a while because Parliament hasn't been sitting, and our Parliament's sitting, and as I understand it, it went back to the House of Reps and they said, nah, let's keep it at 20. So it's got to go back to the Senate, and now we've got to see whether or not they'll pass it based on 20. So it's all getting a bit close to the wire and a bit messy. So we'll see how that goes. But of course, in this budget, now they're saying, well, we'll make it 20 again for financial year 25. It'd be nice, what do you think, if they could resolve the 2024 year and maybe get 25 legislated a bit more promptly?
It'd be good. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Look at, yeah, as accountants, we like to think about tax planning and what measures can be taken to optimize your tax position. And historically, these write-offs have been a real consideration for that, but it's really hard to act when you're not sure whether or not the threshold is going to be 20, 30 or 1,000. Because that's what will happen if they don't get the legislation through. We're working with $1,000.
Right.
Anyway, moving on. A future made in Australia initiative. This was one of the ones that they did announce a while back. It's centered around renewable energy. I have to confess that I am not deeply across this area, but as far as I can tell, there's really not a lot of detail. It's more of a concept. I think they want to put in place a legislation, and then they want to throw a whole bunch of money at trying to improve our status as a global player in the renewables area. So never know. Might work, might be a good thing. See what happens. What else have we got? Not a lot else. There's my favourite one. Did you come across this one? The sweet potato. I had no idea that there was a sweet potato levy, but you learn something every day, and yes, well, we're going to decrease that, and I can only assume that will be a good thing. We'll need to eat some more sweet potatoes.
Eat some more sweet potatoes, that's right.
Very good for you. So there we go. I'm sure it's a good measure. But what else have we got? Look, there's really not that much in there. The ATO have got a bit more money, or will be getting a bit more money. They're going to extend their focus there on personal tax returns. So, as many people would know, they are focusing very much on work-related deductions, what they call undisclosed income, which that's almost code for cryptocurrency transactions. But not just that, and rental properties. And I think this is a very commercial decision on the government. I think if the statistics that the ATO put out around their success around their activity in this space, I think they're going to get a return on investment. I think it particularly when they start applying the laws in a very pedantic manner, it's easy pickings to up the tax collection. So yeah, we shouldn't be too cynical about this, but it's certainly a focus area, and they've got data to suggest that it's worth their while to continue to focus on that. Payday super, Anthony, that's looming, isn't it?
There is. For the 24-25 year, is that right?
I think from memory, let me find my notes. So there's funding on there. Where is it?
So the funding's been provided from the 24-25 year for 4 years.
Yeah, so some funding. I can't read. I think it starts in 26, but let me just find my notes.
I think it might be 26 in memory.
But just while I'm looking for that, I'd heard of, 1st of July 26.
Yeah.
I'd heard rumours, I don't know if you'd heard them too, that the budget was going to include a bit more detail on
Okay.
it. Because we don't really know a whole lot about it as yet. They've had some consultations, but we've
Very much
any kind of real plan in terms of trying to roll it out. But I guess that's what this funding's for. Be nice to start to get some eyes on the detail. I sort of worry that, there's going to be a bunch of things that need to be done around getting systems adapted to be able to do this. But also, if we have a hard cut over to it at the end of June 26, we're going to have a crossover between when we need to pay contributions under the older or the current system, at the same time starting to pay it under the new payday
system. Payday system, yeah.
And that could mean that we've got super payments and lots of them all landing at the same time. So it could be quite challenging from a cash flow perspective. And it would be nice to know a bit more about what this system is going to look like, so that businesses can really start to plan for it, because it'll be here before we know it.
Won't be long. It'll fly.
Anyway, sadly, we didn't really get a lot more detail as we thought we might, but greenwashing. It's a bit of an aside, and anyone who watches the sort of financial space will see that ASIC are onto this concept of greenwashing, which is basically what they call sustainability related financial misconduct, which is, what would you say? In layman's terms, it's BSing about your green credentials.
Pretty much, yeah.
Don't know how much it, broadly affects things, but I think at a high level, I think no one wants companies out there getting away with pretending to be something that they're not. There's stuff in there about safe and responsible AI, some funding for that. That's been a constant in the media. There's lots of talk about how business and individuals will use and can use AI and how that's going to change things. But I think from a government perspective, they've got to work out how to try and regulate it. I'm glad it's them and not me. I think that'll be challenging, but technology in general, our governments and our lawmakers are just perennially behind the 8 ball when it comes to dealing with that.
Yep.
We see it in the Tax Act, where there's just, so many areas where the legislation's written for a time that no longer exists and just doesn't really contemplate the technologies that we have in our day-to-day lives. So, but that probably brings us about to the end of it. Of course, there'll be more news coming out in days and weeks, and start to see some draft legislation and consultation papers and all that kind of stuff. And I guess we'll keep tabs on it. We'll keep those who follow our blog and our podcast up to date with what's going on. And what should people do if they've got questions, Anthony?
Give us a call.
Give us a call, get in touch.
Yep.
Get on our website. We're always happy to have a good chat about what's in the budget, what it means for you or your business, and whether there's anything you should or shouldn't be doing right now.
Yeah.
And the other thing which we haven't spoken about is that we get a federal budget, but we also get state budgets. We're in Victoria. We had our budget a week ago. I think it was the 7th, was it?
Yep.
7th?
Yeah, 7th.
Yeah. Then we've had the budget in WA. They'll be happening around the country all at different times. There is some relevant stuff in there as well, which is worth being across. But I think we've probably punished people enough today, Anthony. Maybe another time.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us to the end of another episode. And as Anthony said, if you've got questions, give us a ring. Thank you.